Hello, everyone. This is Vincent, host of the MSUWMA Podcast. We have another great episode planned for you today. We recently had Justin Jackson, and if that name sounds familiar, it should, because Justin has been host of the MSUWMA Podcast ever since our very first episode. And Justin has brought to you great interviews with people like Michael Kitsis, Doug Bonaparte, Justin Castelli, Taylor Schulte, and many, many more. In today's conversation, we talked about what Justin is doing to further develop his career in financial planning, as well as what he's learned from the many interviews he's done on the MSUWMA podcast, and so much more. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, to the MSUWMA podcast. I am here with Justin Jackson, one of our former podcast hosts. Justin, thanks so much for coming back on.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing right now, and what your plans are in the future.
Yeah, so this is funny because I feel like this is going to be a fun time capsule. It's like, that's what you thought you were doing, buddy? That's what you thought you were doing? So I maybe it's premature, but I'm gonna say what I'm doing definitively. So
for sure.
Right now I'm a financial associate at a company called Financial MD, working for John Salitro, who we had on this podcast. I've been working for him for 2 years. It's been a lot of hard work. I've traveled all over the state of Michigan, speaking at hospitals with him, learn the ropes of that business. So I love John. I trust John. And we go work for him here in Michigan as a financial advisor at Financial MD.
That's awesome. That's super cool. And I think it's really cool too. Like, John is a perfect example of a financial advisor who kind of finds his own niche in terms of the people who he serves. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's got his audience is the medical community, doctors and stuff like that. So I think that's super cool. So you've been a podcast host for the past 2 seasons, which is just crazy. I remember listening to the very first episode that you and Justin recorded with Professor Stiestel, who is the advisor of our program, and we've come such a long way. So and let's not leave this untouched either. Like, this podcast was actually your original idea. So kind of take us through, like, why this, what made that idea, walk us through that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think before podcasts got super mainstream, and I think the pandemic's really blown it up, I've been a big podcast fan, like for years, like probably like 6 years. So like in high school, I was a big podcast fan, and I've done a couple podcasts for some of the businesses I've been a part of. Just always been really gravitated towards it. So Justin Halverson and I were golfing, and I'm sure I just had, idea number 1 million of the day, because I always have ideas. I'm a big idea guy.
Sure.
And part of what I think was the magic of the program this year was the combination of Justin Halverson and who he put around him. So I'm a big idea guy. I get excited about things. Justin Halverson gets things done. Yeah. And we had that right amount of friction that I think made something kind of beautiful for our program this year, where you had a great idea people and a great executor right in the heart of it with Justin Halverson. So that's what I think happened this year.
That is so cool. And again, just to see the progress too, kind of talk us through, what have you seen from just being a podcast host? What's the improvement that you've seen in terms of the way you carry out a conversation, or the way
I speak?
Yeah.
So the first real podcast I did before this was with I had a former Jeopardy contestant on. So she was a local business owner, and she'd been on Jeopardy, but she worked in media. And so we sat down to record a podcast, and I was like, "Hello, hey, how are you doing?" Just talking my regular speaking voice.
Right.
She came in, I was like, "This lady's shouting. I love her. She's a brilliant lady, but why is she shouting?" And I listened back to the podcast, and I sounded like a mumbling, soft mumbling little kid, and she sounded professional, and she sounded very clear. I'm like, oh, podcasters, it's not just about how you you would speak normally, kind of like your regular tone. No, it's about speaking into the microphone, asking clear, concise questions, and there is an art to speaking in a way that is still an organic conversation, but also like something enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, that balance has been something that's been really interesting. And then developing that comfort, like just becoming comfortable doing these things, getting enough reps in is what allows your brain to free up and then start asking better questions. Because, you know, I remember the Castelli interview. I was so nervous because I love Justin Castelli. Like, I've followed his stuff for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was so excited. And I don't think I listened to anything he said because I just wanted to do a good job. I just wanted to do a good job.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as good. It wasn't as good of a podcast as I would have wanted to do. Like, I wanted to ask better questions that I just didn't ask. And like, in hindsight, I was like, man, I just wish I took that opportunity to like learn from the guy.
Right.
So once you get enough experience podcasting and speaking, and, you know, it just becomes kind of a regular thing, it really frees you up to ask the questions you want to ask. And then it makes a much better conversation. So that's kind of been my discovery as I've done more and more of these podcasts.
That's super cool, because I can definitely relate to that as well. Like, my first podcast was with Chris Hogan, who's the author of Everyday Millionaires, and I've been following his content for years. I mean, like Dave Ramsey was the guy who originally got me into personal finance, and why I'm passionate about wealth management to begin with is I got like my personal finance passion from Dave Ramsey, and one of his personalities was Chris Hogan, who wrote Everyday Millionaires, like the largest study of millionaires. Yeah. So like interviewing the actual guy, I was so excited. Like you get really, like, what's the word? I mean, it's
starstruck a little bit. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. And like you're just focusing on doing the podcast well. Like you listen to it afterwards, and then you really understand what he's saying. So I could definitely relate to that. But it was a great podcast. I was really happy and excited to have him on. So what would you recommend to like aspiring podcast hosts? Whoever they want to start a podcast, like, what do you recommend?
The only answer is do more. And that was another reason why I wanted to do this project, and was to get more reps in as a podcaster, because I'm not planning on this being the end of my podcast journey. Like, I'm planning on having that be a big part of my financial planning career, is speaking and doing these podcasts. And, you know, I've got some ideas for what maybe my first big individual podcast will be, but like work that muscle, start speaking, get used to speaking when you're being recorded. You know, there's a certain amount of pressure that comes up in that first little bit, and a lot of people they don't push past that, you know, or they're too scared to sound stupid, or they hate the way their voice sounds. Like, do 50 podcasts and you're not gonna, all that stuff goes away, and then you're really working on becoming a great podcaster, not just somebody who can like do a podcast and, I don't know, not freak out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So after 2 seasons, I mean, we've recorded, I want to say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 podcasts for both seasons. I think we're going to get to 19 podcasts for season 2, with even more. And we already have episodes prepared for season 3. So just based on what all the interviews you've done, what are like the main things that you really took away from those podcasts, from the different people that you've interviewed?
Yeah. So I guess going into the industry, I didn't know if I was going to work for a big IRA or a sales company. I didn't know if I wanted to be like essentially a traditional paraplanner, or a sales guy who then became more of a financial advisor. And speaking to all of the independent advisors that I've spoken to, you know, I've just learned that that's really, really the path I want to go. And and I think talking to so many different independents has given me the confidence on some of like the gray areas. We're like, oh, I don't know if, you know, if somebody said I might need this, well, they're like, no, you don't really need this because it's like this,
right? You
know, and it's like, oh, okay. So it really gave me the confidence to pursue the independent path. And that's kind of been my big takeaway, is like, oh, this is something that is really, really is for me. Yeah. You know, the creative license, all this kind of stuff that is going on in this space is really appealing to me.
Cool. So what 2 things about going that path really appealed to you, like the certain aspects? And then 2, what are you doing now to prepare for that?
Yeah. So what's appealing? My uncle my uncle's a great mentor of mine. He's a financial advisor, and he sat me down like day one, week one of me being interested in being a financial advisor. And he's like, you have a problem with the C word. I was like, what's the C word? And he's like, control. Like, you like to control your environment. And like, I do like control. I like control of my schedule. I like control of where I have to be. You know, I like control. And that's the cool thing about the independent path. And that's like the really appealing thing is like, you know, you kind of get, you know, you have to be a good financial advisor. You still need to give financial advice. There's still that, you know, that whole framework you need to fall in, but you get to kind of do it your way. And, you know, that's something I really like. I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always been kind of creative. And I feel like it's a really good place to culminate those two parts of me.
Sure.
So I'm sorry. And what was the second part you just said?
So the second part is like, what are you doing right now to kind of prepare for that? Like, are you taking any like certifications or anything like that? And like, why are you taking those certifications in particular?
Yeah. So right now the ESG space is something that's really, really interesting to me, the environmental, social, and governance space. So I actually this semester got the Chartered Sustainable Responsible Impact Investment Counselor license. That wasn't like a requirement. That's not like a Series 63, Series 7 life and health insurance. It's not like something you need to do to legally practice. It was just some continuing education. I took actually one graduate course to learn about that. So yeah, I think taking the Series 65 is kind of like the thing I'm really lasered in right now. I took it once and failed it. I didn't study that hard. I kind of thought I took the CFP courses, you know, I don't really need to study for this. I skimmed through the book. I'm like, yeah, I basically know all of this. That, it didn't go well. Studied for the Series 65, treated like its own thing. There's a lot of law questions. And if you think about these licensing exams, they're here to basically make sure that you're not taking advantage of people.
Right.
So it's a lot of legal stuff. It's not really, the Series 65 doesn't so much teach you how to be a good financial planner like the CFP curriculum. It makes sure that you don't hurt retail investors. So that's basically what's going on there. So I got my life and health like 2 years ago now. So Series 65, life and health, took the CSRIC, because that's kind of where I think I want to take my focus. ESG is probably gonna be my niche down the line.
Yeah.
And then, this fall I'll probably be taking the CFP exam. If not this fall, I'll do, March or whenever the first round is.
For sure. No, that's awesome. And you kind of speak to like again, like we were talking about this with John, we were talking about this with you about like finding your own niche. How do you think, like, because you've talked to like Doug Bonaparte, you've talked to Justin Castelli and Taylor Schulte. How do you think those kinds of people and all the other people that you've interviewed, how do you think they found their niche? And like, what have you learned from that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I think about that actually quite a bit. How people find their niche tends to be just really odd and different to different people. Like, some people, they for me, my niche is odd. Like, it happens in kind of a random way. It's like, what feels organic to you? And like, that's a kind of a tough thing. Like, that's kind of a gut thing. Like, what makes us us? Me personally, I don't want to preach this stuff. I'm kind of environmentalist. I care about environmental issues, and turns out there's a lot of people out there that care about environmental issues.
Right.
And we're in a very hectic social climate right now. People care about social issues. I'm not even going to talk about which social issues, but people care about social issues. This is something people care about. And governance, Bernie Madoff just died. Governance has been a big push in the industry for a while, just since all, Enron, Bernie Madoff, all this kind of stuff happening. So ESG, I think, is a really important thing. And it just fell onto me. It kind of came to me, and it made sense, and it clicked. And I always kind of had this like looming feeling like, man, I really like financial planning. I don't think I'm an environmental scientist. I think I'm a suit. Like, I like wearing a suit to work. I like numbers. I like computers. I like mahogany desks. Like, I like the nice things about being a financial planner. But then I'm like, I kind of want to help the earth in my own way. I'm like, maybe I can donate. If I'm a really successful advisor, maybe I can, donate to like Michigan Fund or something like that. But then I learned about ESG and this whole thing that's going on in Europe. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
ESG is like 50% of investments now in Europe are ESG funds. It's coming our way, and it's going to be kind of like holistic planning, where ESG integration, not saying everybody's an environmentalist, but integrating
Right.
ESG like you're understanding your ESG values will become a thing in the United States. So anyways, it just all kind of came together. And I was like, this kind of works. And the niche found me. And it seems like a lot of the people I've talked to, they liked working with, I think Doug Bonaparte just seemed like he liked working with, motivated millennials. Like, I just think he liked being around those people.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure Taylor Schulte works with retirees. Like, I'm sure he's got just a knack for working with older people. And I think he likes that. And I think he feels like he's doing a good job. So
that is, yeah. That's really cool that you say like the niche found me. I thought that was really cool and really interesting. I feel like that's very applicable to a lot of people's situation. Like you don't necessarily seek out a certain niche, like it just kind of finds you and you just kind of like say, oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of the amazing thing about being in a field that's so broad, like insurance, financial planning. These are things that everybody who's a human being in a first world country who has money, who has a house, like everybody needs this.
Yeah.
So your niche, if everybody needs it, you only need so many people within everybody to kind of match you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Michael Kitces has said that at some point. I'm just forgetting.
Right.
but
Exactly.
but that struck me, that struck me to the heart. And I'm like, well, this is what was gravitating towards me. So why fight it?
Yeah.
So, and then even more specifically, probably my first couple years, I'll definitely be concentrated in doctors who care about the environment. Like that's going to be my super niche within my niche.
Right.
And I'm sure there's 100 doctors out there that, really care about the degradation of the rainforest and stuff like that.
Probably.
I'm sure there's 100 doctors. So if I have 100 doctors that want to work with me because we have those commonalities, there's my niche. So that's kind of my game plan, I guess.
For sure. No, that's super cool. And I guess one more thing to kind of highlight, like I said, like we made a lot of progress as a podcast as a whole. Like we've interviewed some huge people in the financial planning and personal finance space.
Yeah.
And honestly, like we'll continue to do that. Did you expect that to happen? Or like what was kind of your mindset in making that all happen?
No, I did not make that happen. That was Justin Halverson all day, dude. He latched on and he was a real visionary. And he's built this program to a level that I never thought we would see this year. And honestly, but I did believe in Justin the whole time. Yeah. I remember sitting in class junior year, like it was my first financial planning class. And I was like, dang, this guy's smart. Like, this guy knows his stuff. And so I went to a Wealth Management Association club meeting, and he wasn't president yet, but I could tell like this dude really cares. He just really cares, and that was enough for me to be like, okay, I got to get involved in this club. And so I joined the club because Justin Halverson was really passionate, and that got me really inspired. And then so I got involved and he led the charge. He followed up with Kitces like week after week after week, politely, but he kept following up, and he got Michael Kitces on the podcast. So that's all Justin Halverson. I really appreciate that he gives me credit for an idea, but I have a lot of ideas, and this is one that got executed, and he's the one that executed it.
So. I can go on about how awesome Justin has done in building up this program, because look at where we're at now. It's just so cool to see our progress and the continuing of building up, because he built us a solid foundation. I feel like this is only the beginning of where MSUWMA is going to go. So I'm excited to see what you guys are going to see and what we're planning to do. We have all kinds of ideas, but none of it would have been possible without Justin. Justin Halverson, for the present, is a president for people who are listening who aren't sure who he is. He is different from Justin Jackson. So if you get like the Justins mixed up, it
it was big Justin, little Justin Halverson. Right. He's like 6'5", like 5'6".
Oh man, that's awesome. So honestly, just to close out this podcast, what would you recommend for like just general advice to students or someone in our program, and the Wealth Management Financial Planning program?
Keep asking. That's been kind of like. That's kind of been the mantra. I feel like, whether said directly or indirectly, I mean, we got in front of so many people because we were the first people to ask. And honestly, people are really excited to give back in this industry. People like talking to young people who are interested in the thing that they really love.
Yeah.
You know, people just are interested in that. People are predisposed to want to tell young people about the thing that they like and their opinion and the things that they did wrong. And they wish somebody just told, gosh, if somebody told me this, you know, people like getting that kind of stuff off their chest.
Right.
So keep asking. That would be my advice. You know, if there's somebody out there who you're like, I like what they're doing, reach out to them. And if they don't respond the first time, don't be like, oh, well, it was worth a shot. Send them 5 emails. Send them 5 polite emails week after week, you know, and then maybe someday like their assistant's like, yeah, he has 15 minutes if you'd like to speak next Thursday. It's like, yes.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Keep asking. So
Right.
that's my advice. That's what I think made this program successful this year. And I think, you know, as long as we can continue to keep that in this legacy, like, you know, MSUWMA is going to be going really far. So.
Absolutely, man. That's so cool. Justin Jackson, thank you so much for being on here. It's cool to have you back on here as a guest after serving as a host for 2 seasons, which is awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back as a guest. So appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.
If you liked what you just heard, please like, comment, and share. This is Vincent Pacillo, producer of the MSUWMA podcast. MSUWMA, or Michigan State University Wealth Management Association, is a student organization part of the Eli Broad College of Business located in East Lansing, Michigan. Our mission is to inspire and educate the next generation of financial planners. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please check out our channel on all platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcast. And check out our social media at MSUWMA and MSUWMA.com.